Hey guys! So a few months ago I posted a video about my home studio and where I was making ceramics during the quarantine, how I set that whole thing up. The intention is to show you how you can set that up. But ever since then I've been getting requests on how my actual studio works. I do have an actual ceramic studio where I work and have pottery classes and all that good stuff. So I'm going to show you around my pottery studio today. Let's get into it. So right over here is the entrance to the studio, and as you come in, you enter our little pickup area and our shop and also the front desk here. So over here we have some flyers from some local ceramicists and our studio flyers, flyers from the people who work here, and anything else that might be interesting. So yeah, here's our main pickup shelf here. So down here we keep all of the member work. We have a community ceramic studio here, which means that we have people who pay membership and then they can come in and use the space anytime during opening hours, but they're all pretty dang good. Here we have Peanut's food and a ball that she never plays with, but the other dogs who visit the studio seem to like it. And here we have our little shop. So we have the take-home clay right here. This is the clay that I've started to offer since the lockdown as a way of people to make pottery at home, and then they can bring their ceramics here to be fired. And here's all the glaze options that we can show them. We also sell little toolkits. I have this zine that I think I told you about before that I wrote during the lockdown, how to make pottery at home. Great tips in there. And then we've got our tools here, which really needs to be restocked because some of them are empty. This is the engobes for people to paint their wares. And then just some random pickup stuff here. We had this sale over the weekend, so there's a lot of things to be picked up from that. And then over on the opposite side, we have more pickup shelves. So yeah, things from classes. These are the try the wheel classes, so the first classes that people try on the wheel. And then up here we have one of the shelves of finished 6-week classes. So these people were once absolute beginners and now they're able to make some pretty cool ceramics on the wheel. So they're ready for pickup. And over here is some ceramics from the take-home clay that I was just talking about earlier. So people making some really cool stuff. I've got a bit of shipping supplies up on top whenever I need to ship products or materials. And then over here we have one of our 2 air filters. So these help us to not get sick with silicosis, keeps the air clean. When it's green, we know that it's chilling and there's not much in the air. And then right over here we have our clay press, aka extruder. That doesn't get used too often, but it's a really handy tool in general. And we've got our little dies and stuff over here. Okay, so over here is the counter and desk area. This is not necessary in most ceramic studios, of course, but we do have a storefront that's open to the public, people picking up their pottery that they finished, people buying materials and stuff, so we have to have a cash register. And because we have an open studio, I'm often working here on my computer, doing random things, so there's a lot of great stuff back here, but I'm not sure it's so interesting for you. If it is, let me know. You can write that down below if you want a little tour of my office area. And we have the cashier here, and yeah, some flowers and some hand sanitizer because 'tis the season. Just below the counter we have some paper to wrap things up, of course some bags for people picking up their pottery, and then some backstock and our studio speakers. Oh, and here is Peanut's little cubby. Her blanket's all messed up right now, but sometimes Peanut hangs out in here and watches the front door. At the moment, she's preferring the ground. Okay, so just to the right of the desk, wait, left of the desk? This way of the desk is our sink area, which is one of the busiest areas in the studio. We have, of course, the sink with the water, soap, and all the sponges and stuff. And then here is all of our tools. So I've got towels up here and all the big buckets and stuff, and then all the small tools are down here. And then I really like having a drying shelf. Here we just have the a towel down and a metal slatted shelf here to dry things on, because then they don't you know, get rusty or moldy or anything. It's really important for like metal and wooden tools that you let them dry out in the air. And just under the sink is our filtration system. So this bucket here has 3 chambers in, and that prevents the clay and stuff from going into our sewage system. So I'm sure you've heard me talking about that before. And normally this would just go into the drain after this one. However, we have a pretty funny sink system here. You can see we've got some garden hoses. This is very DIY because the sink is actually meant to be in the kiln room. So you can see we have, like, the sink is behind the kilns, like the normal inlet outlet, just behind the kilns, but we wanted the kilns in there, of course. So we took some garden hoses and led it over here. So because the inlet water is pressurized, you can just like let it go straight into the tap here. But the outlet needs some pressure, so we have a little pump here. This is just like a garden pump kind of a thing, and when this goes to the top, it triggers. Okay, now you can turn off. So that's why we have this extra thing here, just for the pump. Otherwise, you would just put this into the outlet water. Yeah, and some extra buckets. And then, of course, up here we have, this is our slip water. So we collect the slip water in here and use that for recycling later. And then here, it's almost empty, but we have the glaze water, so we're not putting any glazes down the drain either. Oh, and here we have a chalkboard that has any important information on it, and a kiln schedule, because there's a lot going on here and we need to stay organized. So over here from the sink area, we have our kiln room, as I mentioned. I'm not gonna go in there right now because otherwise this video is just going to be 100 hours long, but if you want a kiln room tour, I can do that, let me know. But here we have the Bisque pickup shelf. So this is for the members, and this is when all of the pots come out of the Bisque and for the members to pick up and find their pottery so that they can glaze them. And we have a little system here to keep Bisque going, because occasionally things get abandoned here. But yeah, this is all the Bisque from September and August. So just backing up now from the door over here, we have our big window and our wheels. I put these here because I thought it would be awesome to just sit in the sun and throw on the wheel, have some really good light. And in the evening, we get evening sun, so it just like shines through here and it's just like really, really beautiful. Peanut is taking a nap. So yeah, we have 6 wheels. That means we can have classes up to 5 students with 1 teacher wheel. And yeah, during Corona times, we actually have to spread everything out. We have to move the wheels all the time to like into the big space to make sure everyone is 1.5 meters separated during the membership, because they're not usually fully occupied. They just sit like this. We have some community aprons over here and some lovely plants that I'm just awful at keeping alive. These would completely be dead by now if it weren't for other people watering them for me, because I'm just useless. Yeah, and because this is a really big main street here, we have some privacy film. Yeah, we started the studio actually in January in 2019, and it was really funny because it gets dark very early in January here, especially in Berlin. And people were just like sitting with their noses up to the window, like watching us throw. And so I was like, this is a little intense. First few times it was funny and we were happy to show them. After a while, it got a little creepy. So we put up some privacy film. Okay, so right behind the wheels is kind of the visual centerpiece of the studio. We have these amazing bookshelves here that were left from the previous tenant. So I actually saved these. They were going to tear them down when they were like renovated the whole space when I moved in, and they were going to take these down And I was like, no, they're beautiful and they're so practical, because obviously you need a lot of shelves as potters, but you also need a ton of drawer space. Like every single one of these drawers is being occupied with something or another. I think the person who built them was a shoemaker or a shoe repairs person. That's who occupied the studio before I moved in. Okay, so here we have, all basically the tools that you might need. So I'll just quickly run through them all in case you're curious what we use regularly. We've got some mirrors to use while you're throwing. I use these during throwing class to show the steps of how pottery goes through on the wheel. We've got our dry reclaim bucket here. This will later get mixed with our wet reclaim bucket to make the reclaim. We've got some rolling pins and a hair dryer in here. Backstock for the engobes. This is the market stuff drawer, so sheets, and there's also some extra towels in there. Miscellaneous drawer like scissors, tape, rubber bands, etc. This is all the stuff for the take-home clay, a lot of paper and bags and stuff. This is my tools, so the angle grinder and some wedging boards, extension cords, things like that. We have our little library here. These are all books that I've bought or have been gifted to the studio or actually belong to some of the members. Some of these do. We've got these little ties here to tie up your clay bags. Some bats, some pins for the bats, scales and stuff. Here's some reclaim that I'm just working on right now. The small boards live here. And then we have the wedging boards down here. So if you have a wedging board of your own, it's really important that you don't stack them until they're dry. So we usually leave the wet wedging boards here against the drawers to dry out before stacking them back up. So here we have safety stuff and sieves, so goggles, earplugs, extra masks and stuff, like glazing stuff basically. Here we have a bunch of fun hand building stuff like stencils, cookie cutters, stamps, things like that. This is some clay in here, and we have some backstock for the tools that I sell. This is more extra tools, more for the classes, and some like bags and like kind of miscellaneous extra stuff like extra pens and things. This drawer is my favorite drawer. It has all of the class samples in it. So over here we have more bats. We have our studio engobes here in bigger jars, some turntables and bats and extra miscellaneous. These go on top of the turntables. Here we have our drying station. So I have the classwork from last night's workshop here, but normally it's empty, and we have a fan that you can use to dry things. Maybe you saw my video on drying pottery. I love to use the fan to do that. And here we have class clay, so a bunch of reclaim, miscellaneous clay, class clay, etc. This is sandpaper. This is powders and engobe backstock, basically raw materials. This one is also raw materials and kind of random string and textiles, things like that. Here is my tool drawer. So yeah, all sorts of random tools, WD-40, that kind of stuff. And here's my personal drawer where I keep all of my personal tools and materials, basically everything that I own in there. And then here's big stuff. So I've got a big bag of sponges in there, and also I normally keep my tripod in there. They're all very like utilized. I couldn't believe it. Took me a while to actually fill all the drawers, but now they're full and they're gonna be full. And so over here we have the cellar right here, and I didn't want to give the shelves over the cellar to anyone else because they're dangerous. So I said, it's like my studio. If I fall, it's my fault. So these are my shelves. So I often have to put the cellar door down to access them, or I can just kind of reach. But yeah, it's a little dangerous, but we really needed more shelves. Yeah, and then I think my favorite thing about the studio is just like the amount of space we have in the table area. So like, it's usually not just me in the studio, although when it is just me, I can also fill the table area. But I just love working in spaces where you can just like walk around the tables, and you have like tables in a row, so you can use the table on this side and on this side. It's just so like ergonomic somehow, and I don't know, I am really spoiled with this space, and if I ever move to a small one, I'm going to be sad, I think. So yeah, we have these big tables that are just awesome. So the last part of the studio that I wanted to show you is we have this back area. So just behind the tables, We have our glazes and engobe test tiles. These are all the studio glazes that are always replenished and inclusive in the membership. Same for the engobes, and then sometimes we get donated glazes, or we also have our mystery glazes here that's made with the glaze rest. And yeah, glazes that like members have bought that they don't want anymore, that they just donate to the studio. So these are some like kind of rotating glazes. And then here's all the member shelf. So I know it looks a bit like a mess, but each person has only one shelf, and they get really full really fast. So yeah, that's pretty much the studio. I mean, this is the main area of the studio. This is where we do all of the building. I didn't want to include also the cellar. We also have a big cellar that's the size of this main room. And that's where we do our glazing. And we have a lot of storage down there, a lot of class storage. So if you're interested in seeing that, definitely let me know, and I'll do a tour of the cellar at some point. Yeah, and I tried not to blah 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 on too much about things that are not interesting, but if there's anything that is especially exciting and interesting for you and you want to hear how I do it, just let me know, and maybe I can do like an Instagram reel or a story or something. I'm really proud of this space. A lot of love has been put into it. I learned a lot because I had to build a lot of things from the studio. So anything in the studio is either built completely by me, like this table here, or like kind of assembled from bits and bobs of like, it's like half made. So like the desk is just made from some IKEA Ivar shelves. This desk is kind of like a Frankenstein. So you can recognize maybe these, it's made from these IKEA Ivar shelves, but this here is actually flooring that I added to the front. And then of course I just added some wood to the top. These are supposed to be the corner units of the Ivar shelf, but I cut them so they would be rounded. But that's cool because it like connects then to these shelves here. So it's kind of all one unit. These are just like Frankenstein shelves. They were from an old shelf unit, and I just put them on these brackets. Yeah, I made this table completely from scratch, and as well as this thing, the heater's underneath here. So I had to build something to cover it up because I wanted to put plants on the shelf there. So I built that completely from scratch. That was made during quarantine. This table is my proudest achievement that I've ever made. I made this completely from scratch using like 50% recycled wood that I already had. This down here is meant for storing clay and whatever else you need. However, because we need to move this table so often due to yeah, Corona and moving the wheels around, we keep nothing down there right now. And then this table was a bit of a Frankenstein. This part is like an old metal table that I got for free from my old studio, and I just put some wood on top. A lot of love and a lot of time went into the studio, so I hope that you can see that, and I hope that you like my space. So yeah, that's pretty much it for me today. If you want to learn more about me and my studio, you can find me over on Instagram at Pottery to the People. Please send me any questions you have about the studio space or any of the systems or ways I do things here. I'm super happy to tell you all how that works. Yeah, and otherwise, that's it from me. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye, friends.